My name is Alison Mitchell. I am not the kind of person who enjoys drama or conflict. I've always believed in the power of kindness, the importance of family, and that Christmas should be a time of peace and joy. But as I sit here writing this, I realize that Christmas dinners have always been the stage for the most memorable and often most painful moments in my family's history. Every year I go home for Christmas not just because I want to be with family, but because it's tradition. A tradition that feels more like an obligation sometimes, but one that has always held an uncomfortable kind of familiarity. I grew up in a house where the holidays were about family, but also about power dynamics, sarcasm, and passive-aggressive remarks. And every year, without fail, my grandmother had a way of stealing the show. This year, however, I was prepared for something different, something that would break me out of the mold I had been stuck in for far too long. It was Christmas Eve when I arrived at my childhood home. The air outside was crisp and cold, the kind that numbs your face but feels refreshing when you breathe it in deeply. Inside, the house was filled with the warm scents of roasted turkey, gingerbread, and cinnamon, exactly as it should be. The living room was decked out in the usual Christmas decorations, a massive tree with glittering lights, garlands of tinsel hanging across every doorway, and stockings stuffed with cheap, novelty gifts. The whole family was there, my parents, my younger brother, and, of course, Grandma. My grandmother is a figure of authority in our family, one of those people who doesn't just dominate a conversation but manipulates it to suit her own narrative. She's the matriarch, the voice of wisdom, or at least that's how she sees herself. We sat around the dinner table, the usual merry chatter filling the room. There was nothing particularly unusual about it at first. My mother served up the mashed potatoes with an exaggerated flourish, my father asked my brother how his studies were going, and my aunt, always with an eye on her smartphone, made small talk with anyone who would listen. But then, as I began to feel comfortable and relaxed, Grandma spoke. "Alison," she said, cutting through the noise like a hot knife through butter. Her voice was sweet yet sharp, like honey laced with venom. "It's a good thing your parents pay off your student loans, isn't it?" I froze. My fork hovered midair, and for a split second I thought I hadn't heard her correctly. But then I looked around. Everyone at the table went quiet. My younger brother stopped mid-bite, his eyes flicking up from his phone. Even my parents seemed to tense up, though they didn't dare speak up. Grandma had made her point, and she was waiting for a reaction. I swallowed hard, my throat feeling tight. I could feel the heat rising in my face. This was the last thing I wanted to hear, especially after everything I had worked for. I had spent 4 long years at college, balancing 2 part-time jobs while maintaining my grades. I was determined to make something of myself without relying on my family for financial help. I had student loans, yes, but I was handling them on my own. Or at least, I thought I was. "Excuse me?" I said, my voice trembling slightly. I was trying so hard not to let the anger slip through, but I knew my words were sharper than I intended. Grandma didn't miss a beat. I said, "It's a good thing your parents are paying off your student loans," she repeated, almost as if she hadn't just belittled me in front of the entire family. "I mean, it must be nice. Some people struggle to make ends meet, but you've got it all taken care of, don't you?" There it was. The typical grandma dismissal. The subtle jab wrapped up in the facade of concern and family values. The assumption that because I was pursuing a degree, I didn't deserve the same respect and recognition that others did for working hard. I could feel my face flushing with heat, my blood boiling. I had been quiet for too long, letting her comments slide, but this time something in me snapped. I wasn't that naive young girl anymore who was afraid to speak up to Grandma. I stood up, slowly, feeling the tension in the room shift around me. My mother's eyes were wide, pleading silently for me to sit down and avoid a confrontation. My father, always the peacemaker, looked at me, his expression torn. But I wasn't going to let this one slide. "Actually, Grandma," I began, my voice cold and controlled, "you've got that completely wrong." She raised an eyebrow, clearly amused by my response. "Oh, do I now?" "Yes, you do," I said, my tone unwavering. "You see, I didn't just sit back and let my parents pay off my loans. I've been working multiple jobs, juggling school, pulling all-nighters to study. And every single penny of those loans that's been paid off, that's been because I've worked for it, not because my parents handed me anything." The room was silent. The sound of clinking silverware had long stopped, and now all eyes were on me. I could feel the weight of my words hanging in the air. "Maybe you think it's easy to live in the world I'm in," I continued, my gaze never leaving her. "Maybe you think I don't know what it's like to struggle, to work hard for what I have. But you're wrong. I know all too well. And just because I'm not drowning in debt and I have support doesn't mean I haven't earned everything I've worked for." Grandma, ever the narcissist, tried to brush me off with a dismissive wave of her hand. "Oh, come on, Alison. You don't have to act all high and mighty. I'm just saying it's a privilege. Some people don't have that privilege. Don't get all defensive." But I wasn't backing down. Not this time. "No, Grandma, you don't get it," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "What you don't realize is that I've been working my ass off for years. You've never seen me stay up until 2 a.m. writing papers while working shifts at a diner, dealing with rude customers, or dealing with professors who think that because I have a degree, I'm automatically entitled to success." My words hung in the air like a gust of cold wind. Everyone at the table sat frozen, unwilling to interject. The moment felt surreal, like time had stopped and it was just me and Grandma in a battle of wills. The old woman looked at me, her eyes narrowed, but for once I could see the flicker of doubt in them. "And if you ever want to continue thinking that it's all because of my parents, that's fine. But just know this, Grandma," I said, a smirk pulling at the corners of my lips, "I'm not the same person I was when I was younger. I've earned everything I have, and I don't need you or anyone else to validate me. So next time you think you can make a snide remark, remember that I'm standing here in front of you, not taking your crap anymore." For a moment, Grandma said nothing. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Her face flushed with a mixture of confusion, anger, and perhaps a hint of embarrassment. The woman who had always been so quick to tear others down was now silent. She was unaccustomed to being confronted, to being challenged. I stood there, my chest rising and falling with each breath, waiting for her to respond. But instead of the usual sarcastic quip, she looked down at her plate, fidgeting with her fork. "Fine," she muttered, the words barely audible. "You've made your point." But the silence was deafening. There was no going back from this moment. I had made my stand. And in doing so, I felt lighter, unburdened. For the first time, I realized that I didn't need my family's approval. I didn't need to walk on eggshells to avoid their judgment. I sat down, my heart still racing, but a sense of satisfaction settling in. Grandma may have been silent, but the room felt different now. It felt like I had taken my power back. The rest of the meal was awkward. Conversations resumed, but there was an undercurrent of tension that couldn't be ignored. No one dared bring up the subject of loans again, and for the first time in my life, I was okay with that. The Christmas dinner ended with no fanfare. Everyone went their separate ways, but as I walked out of the house that night, I knew something had shifted. It wasn't just about the loans, it was about respect. It was about standing up for myself and no longer allowing anyone to undermine my worth. As I closed the door behind me and stepped into the cold night air, I realized that Christmas dinner had given me the best gift of all, the ability to stand my ground. And as for Grandma? Well, I knew she'd think twice before making assumptions about me again. This time the power was mine.